The story did not begin with explosions or gunfire. It began with silence, the kind that settles into a room when strangers size each other up. In a joint military exercise somewhere in Southeast Asia, French Special Forces operators arrived with confidence etched into every movement. They had reputations, battle history, and the quiet arrogance that often follows elite training. Across from them stood Filipino operators, calm, disciplined, and unassuming. Their gear was simpler, their posture less dramatic. To some observers, they looked ordinary. There were smirks at first, a few jokes whispered behind hands. The French operators, seasoned by missions across Africa and the Middle East, assumed this would be routine. They believed they were about to train partners who would learn from them, not challenge them. The Filipinos noticed the laughter, the sideways glances, the underestimation. They said nothing. In their culture, respect is shown through action, not words. What the French did not know was that these Filipino operators were shaped by a very different kind of battlefield. Jungle warfare was not something they practiced once a year. It was their reality. Dense forests, suffocating humidity, unpredictable terrain, and enemies who vanished into the landscape had taught them patience, restraint, and deadly precision. They were not loud, they were not flashy, but they were prepared. The exercise was designed as a competitive simulation. Small unit tactics, reconnaissance, evasion, and capture-the-flag-style objectives meant to test awareness, coordination, and adaptability. It was friendly on paper, but pride was involved. Everyone wanted to win. The French team moved first. Their approach was aggressive and confident. They advanced quickly, communicating efficiently, covering ground at a pace that suggested dominance. For a while, it seemed their confidence was justified. They believed speed and pressure would overwhelm their counterparts. The Filipino team moved differently. They blended into the environment. Their pace was slower, but deliberate. They observed more than they moved. Every step was calculated. Every sound mattered. They used the terrain like a language they had spoken all their lives. Hours passed. The jungle swallowed noise and direction alike. The French operators began to feel it first. The humidity drained their energy. Sweat soaked through gear. Bugs, heat, and limited visibility began to erode their rhythm. They were still skilled, still dangerous, but something was off. The environment was not obeying them. Then the unexpected happened. One French operator was tagged out. No one saw how it happened. No sudden movement. No obvious mistake. He was simply out. Confusion rippled through the team. They tightened formation, increased communication, and pushed forward. Another went down. Then another. The Filipino operators were everywhere and nowhere at the same time. They used misdirection, false trails, and environmental camouflage that made them nearly invisible. They anticipated movements not by technology alone, but by instinct. Years of counterinsurgency operations had trained them to think like the hunted and the hunter simultaneously. By the midpoint of the exercise, the score was unthinkable. 5 Filipino successes, 0 French. A clean sweep in a scenario where no one expected dominance from the quieter team. The laughter was gone. What replaced it was disbelief. Then respect. The French operators regrouped, analyzed their mistakes, and tried to adapt. But adaptation takes time, and the exercise clock was unforgiving. The Filipinos did not celebrate. They did not taunt. They simply executed. When the final whistle blew, the result stood unchallenged. A 0-5 outcome that stunned observers and quietly rewrote assumptions. Later, during the debrief, something rare happened. The French commanders spoke openly about what they had witnessed. They acknowledged the tactical brilliance, environmental mastery, and discipline of the Filipino operators. There were no excuses, just lessons. The Filipino team finally spoke more freely. They explained how familiarity with terrain, humility, and teamwork shaped their approach. They talked about training in silence, about learning to listen to the forest, about trusting each other without ego. For them, this was not about proving superiority. It was about survival, professionalism, and honor. This moment did not make headlines worldwide. There were no viral clips or official press releases celebrating the outcome. But within military circles, the story traveled quietly, passed from one unit to another as a reminder of a timeless truth. Never underestimate those who do not announce their strength. The so-called disaster was not a failure of skill. It was a failure of assumption. The French Special Forces were elite, but on that day they learned that elitism does not guarantee dominance in every environment. Experience, humility, and adaptability matter just as much. For the Filipino operators, the exercise affirmed something they already knew: that respect is earned, not demanded, that silence can be powerful, and that when the moment comes, preparation speaks louder than confidence. This story remains a lesson etched into joint training history, not as a humiliation, but as a turning point. A reminder that true strength often arrives quietly, without laughter, without noise, and without warning. If stories like this interest you, stories that reveal the human side of discipline, humility, and unexpected excellence, then stay with this channel. Subscribe, like, and share. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones the world almost overlooked.